In this episode, we talk about the recent developments in Bangladesh. We also talk about AAP MLA Somnath Bharti alleging that BJP MP Bansuri Swaraj committed corrupt practices. But first, we talk about the highlights of PM Modi's Independence Day speech. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Yesterday, India celebrated its 78th Independence Day, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi delivered his first speech on Independence Day in his third term.
वो शुभ घड़ी है जब हम देश के लिए मर मिटने वाले, देश की आजादी के लिए अपना जीवन समर्पित करने वाले, आजीवन संघर्ष करने वाले, फांसी के तख्त पर चढ़कर के भारत मां की जय के नारे लगाने वाले अनगिनत आजादी के दीवानों को नमन करने का ये पर्व है.
PM Modi talked about the work done by his government in multiple sectors over the last decade while promising faster reforms in his third term. Along with that, he also addressed some core ideological issues. To learn about the highlights of PM Modi's speech at the Red Fort and what significance these issues hold, we have Indian Express's Vikas Pathak joining us. Vikas, can you begin by telling us what were the major issues and topics that were taken up by PM Modi during his speech?
Much of the speech was on the schemes of his government in the last 10 years, what he intends to do in the coming 5 years, and he gave details across sectors, some statistics, some details. This is what he's been doing. In fact, even during his Lok Sabha campaign a few months back, he was doing the same thing. So maybe 90% of the time he spoke about those things. But those were, in a way, things that he has repeated over and over again. But then there were some key takeaways in a political sense. He did not spend much time on them, but they were the ones that made news value. So that included a call for a uniform civil code, and which he called a secular civil code this time. It also included, a tacit statement on Bangladeshi Hindus and the need for their security. There was also a hint of a reference to the Kolkata rape and murder case. Without naming the state government, he also made a call for simultaneous elections to Lok Sabha and state assemblies. So these were some of these things that he said. And of course, he also talked about the fact that he's combating corruption and he will continue to do that. And also exclaiming that some people do not seem to like it and are supporting the corrupt. So these were the key political takeaways.
Talking about the Uniform Civil Code that Prime Minister Narendra Modi described as a secular civil code in his speech. So, can you tell us how does the BJP exactly define this term and what, according to the party, is restricting its implementation?
Well, Uniform Civil Code is provided in the Indian Constitution, Article 44, under the Directive Principles of State Policy, which means that it's a futuristic vision of the Constitution makers, but it is not justiciable. You cannot go to a court for it unless a law is made to implement a Uniform Civil Code. So, ever since the Shah Banu case of 1985, after which Rajiv Gandhi used his parliamentary majority to overturn a Supreme Court judgment, and the judgment of the Supreme Court basically said that the ex-husband of Shah Banu had to pay her maintenance beyond the 3-month iddat period, which is provided for in the Sharia law. So there were protests and Rajiv Gandhi overturned the judgment. So ever since then, the BJP has really latched on to Uniform Civil Code as a core demand. It is said by the opposition or critics of the BJP that the BJP deliberately picks up issues which have a certain Muslim angle attached to it. Among the three core demands of the BJP since the late 80s, one is the Ram Temple at Ayodhya, which has come up. The second was abrogation of Article 370 that provided special status to Jammu and Kashmir. That has also been repealed now. The third is the Uniform Civil Code, where again the moot question is, why should Sharia law apply to Muslim marriages and succession? Why should not a common law apply to everyone in family laws? Which basically means that, a Muslim man can marry more than once, which a Hindu man cannot. So these are things that the opposition has always been saying, or critics of the BJP have been saying, that all these ideological issues have a Muslim angle to them. The BJP, on the other hand, has been saying for the last 30-40 years that for justice to be provided to Muslim women, supposing there could be cases like a man marrying more than one woman, which in a modern sense is taken as contrary to women's rights. Then there could be issue of maintenance. Instant triple talaq was an issue, which the Supreme Court struck down some years ago. So the BJP has been saying that what it has been talking about is what it calls, quote unquote, positive secularism, which means secularism that is in sync with gender justice and other such issues. So when the Prime Minister said secular civil code today, he was actually hitting out at that, saying that if India is a secular state, then why should the consequences of marriage, be different for people of different communities? That was the whole thing.
जो कानून धर्म के आधार पर देश को बांटते, जो ऊंच नीच का कारण बन जाते हैं, ऐसे कानूनों को आधुनिक समाज में कोई स्थान नहीं हो सकता है। और इसलिए मैं तो कहूंगा, अब समय की मांग है कि देश में एक सेकुलर सिविल कोड हो। हमने कम्युनल सिविल कोड में 75 साल बिताए हैं, अब हमें सेक्युलर सिविल कोड की तरफ जाना होगा और तब जाकर के देश में धर्म के आधार पर जो भेदभाव हो रहे हैं, सामान्य नागरिक को जो दूरी महसूस होती है, उससे हमें मुक्ति मिलेगी।
Vikas, we are seeing that there is a massive uproar in the country regarding the Kolkata doctor rape and murder case. So, did PM Modi acknowledge that in his speech?
So he says that there's a serious problem of atrocities against women and justice for women should be there. And he said that, state governments should ensure quick action when there are cases of atrocities against women. And he's also said that while atrocities against women are reported widely, when eventually the accused gets punished, it is not reported as widely. And he said that this emboldens people with a criminal mindset who commit atrocities against women. So he flagged that issue. When he mentioned state governments in today's context, it's pretty clear that he was referring indirectly to the West Bengal government. The rape and murder case has been transferred to the CBI by the High Court. He did not name the particular government concerned, but since it comes at this time, it is being read as an oblique reference to the West Bengal government and the Kolkata rape and murder case.
हमारी माताओं, बहनों, बेटियों के प्रति जो अत्याचार हो रहे हैं, उसके प्रति देश का आक्रोश है, जन सामान्य का आक्रोश है। इस आक्रोश को मैं महसूस कर रहा हूं। इसको देश को, समाज को, हमारी राज्य सरकारों को गंभीरता से लेना होगा। महिलाओं के विरुद्ध अपराधों की जल्द से जल्द जांच हो, राक्षसी कृत्य करने वालों को जल्द से जल्द कड़ी सजा हो, वो समाज में विश्वास पैदा करने के लिए जरूरी है। मैं ये भी बताना चाहूंगा,
Vikas, very recently, Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's bail plea was denied by the court. He has been arrested by the Enforcement Directorate with regards to the liquor policy case. And over the last couple of months, that has been quite a major issue as far as the capital of the country is concerned. So, did Prime Minister Narendra Modi address that in his speech?
So, Prime Minister Modi basically said that, he's been waging a war against corruption. And he said that I have also had to pay a price for it, but that price is not big enough. It is very important for the country to wage a war against corruption. And he said that I will continue to do that. And then he also added that he's very surprised that there are certain people who stand in defense of the corrupt. So while he took no names, it seemed to be a jibe at the opposition, because the opposition has been saying all along that the Prime Minister has been misusing, or the government has been misusing the ED and the CBI against political opponents to wrongfully put them in jail. So this was basically a message that, see, I'll continue to do it, and this is a fight against corruption. The opposition has been saying, of course, that this is a misuse of agencies, because had it been a fight against corruption, how is it that people who faced corruption charges have in many cases been inducted into the BJP in the last few months?
हमारा हर देशवासी भ्रष्टाचार की दिमक से परेशान रहा है। हर स्तर के भ्रष्टाचार ने सामान्य मानवीय का व्यवस्थाओं के प्रति विश्वास तोड़ दिया है। उसको अपनी योग्यता क्षमता का प्रति अन्याय की जो गुस्सा होता है वो राष्ट्र की प्रगति में नुकसान करता है। और इसलिए हमने व्यापक रूप से भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ एक जंग छेड़ा है। मैं जानता हूं इसकी कीमत मुझे चुकानी पड़ती है, मेरी प्रतिष्ठा को चुकानी पड़ती है, लेकिन राष्ट्र से बड़ी मेरी प्रतिष्ठा नहीं हो सकती है, राष्ट्र के सपनों से बड़ा मेरा सपना नहीं हो सकता। और इसलिए ईमानदारी के साथ भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ मेरी लड़ाई जारी रहेगी।
And during his speech, what did Prime Minister Narendra Modi had to say about one nation, one election, which is another issue that the BJP has been pushing since quite some time?
So the Prime Minister said that it's time to move towards one nation, one election, which means simultaneous elections to Lok Sabha and state assemblies. And he said that otherwise a lot of resources wasted on elections perpetually. And since elections keep coming, every policy gets associated with electoral end. And he said that this was not a good thing to happen. So he said that I've been talking about one nation, one election, and I would want political parties across the country, as also, commentators who understand the constitution, to kind of support this vision. Well, initially we had simultaneous elections to the Lok Sabha and state assemblies for a few decades. But between the period of 1967 and 71, they got disrupted. So, there was a committee under former President of India, Ramnath Kovind, that had been formed to look at how one nation, one election could be achieved. And they had suggested that on the first day of a fresh Lok Sabha, a new Lok Sabha, the President of India would issue a notification with an appointed date. That is the date on which that Lok Sabha's term would end. And he also said, that report said, that in case a government at the center or in a state loses majority and there are fresh elections, elections can be held, but the term of the new government would end on that day when the Lok Sabha's term ends. So that within 5 years, all the elections will become simultaneous. But for that to happen, if it had to be done now, in case the template that the government is thinking of is the Ramnath Kovind Committee's template, then it is not happening in this Lok Sabha, because the first sitting of the Lok Sabha happened without either a constitutional amendment as suggested by the committee, nor a notification by the President. So, unless they have some other scheme in mind, he has said it, but it is unlikely to get implemented before 2029, which means even if they plan from 2029, the full implementation would happen only by 2034, which is far away in the future.
हर 3 महीने 6 महीने कहीं न कहीं चुनाव चल रहा है। कोई भी योजना जाहिर करोगे आप तो मीडिया में देखेंगे, चुनाव आया तो फलाना हो गया, चुनाव आया तो फलाना हो गया। हर काम को चुनाव के रंग से रंग दिया गया है। और इसलिए देश में व्यापक चर्चा हुई है, सभी राजनीतिक दलों ने अपने विचार रखे हैं। एक कमेटी ने बहुत बढ़िया अपना रिपोर्ट तैयार किया है। वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन के लिए देश को आगे आना होगा। मैं लाल किले से
With everything that has been going on in Bangladesh, what did the PM had to say regarding the situation in the neighboring country?
Yes. So regarding Bangladesh, Prime Minister Modi clearly said that a new government is there, and it is ensured there that the minorities, the Hindus in particular, stay safe. And then he also added that, India will continue to remain a well-wisher of Bangladesh and wishes the country all the best.
बांग्लादेश में जो कुछ भी हुआ है उसको लेकर पड़ोसी देश के नाते चिंता होना, मैं इसको समझ सकता हूं। मैं आशा करता हूं कि वहां पर हालात जल्द ही सामान्य होंगे। खास करके 140 करोड़ देशवासियों की चिंता कि वहां हिंदू, वहां के अल्पसंख्यक, उस समुदाय की सुरक्षा सुनिश्चित हो।
And Vikas, what were some other prominent issues that Prime Minister Narendra Modi talked about in his speech at the Red Fort?
Well, as I said, most of the content of the speech was regarding what he has done in the last 10 years and what he intends to do in future with a vision for a developed India in 2047. So he reeled out statistics. He talked about various sectors. So he talked about, MSMEs. He talked about small farmers. He talked about village electrification. He said that 12 crore families are getting tap water now through the Jal Jeevan scheme. He talked about his vision for one district, one product. He talked about renewable energy. He talked about defense and the surgical strikes that happened. So he talked about a number of things. He talked about 1 crorepati didis, that increasing the income of women, and how the target is 3 crore. So, well, it was a cross-sectoral, reeling out of stats and other things to achieve a Viksit Bharat. But these are things that he has been speaking for months now. He said these things almost in every pre-Lok Sabha election rally of his. And, things like India's exports have doubled. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. We want to become the 3rd largest economy in the world. So all these things. These are things that are part of the detail. But that detail has been talked about by the Prime Minister repeatedly.
And next we talk about the current situation in Bangladesh. It has been 10 days since Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned and fled the country, leading to the formation of an interim government and the appointment of Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus as its chief advisor. The interim government is now working to restore normalcy in the country, but its future remains uncertain. Indian Express's diplomatic affairs editor Shubhajit is currently in Dhaka and joined us to discuss the current situation and the developments of the past few days. Shubhajit, you are currently in Bangladesh. Can you describe to us what is the current situation there?
Well, it's been 10 days since former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, she quit and fled the country. In Bangladesh, in the last 10 days, the interim government has taken over, which is an army-backed interim government, and it is being led by Professor Muhammad Yunus, Nobel laureate. And he is, sworn in advisors, essentially picked up a cabinet and trying to get control of the situation. As of today, the streets are quite normal in Dhaka and in Bangladesh. There were only in the first few days, first week, actually, there was a lot of tension on the streets, especially outside Dhaka. It was more because the police had gone missing, because the protesters were especially angry at the police forces for firing at the protesters. So the policemen had, after the fall of the Hasina government, they had just disappeared, abandoned their police stations, and that was the situation. The question is now, the government is trying to bring back normalcy. So in terms of public transport and all, they're opening now. The shops have been open for last few days, I've been here for 5-6 days and they have been open. In some parts, they've partially opened, some parts they've mostly all shops are open, businesses have opened, banks have opened, schools and colleges are still shut. So the chaotic Dhaka traffic is back, and the same traffic jam that I've experienced in my last visits over the last 10-15 years, I've experienced those. So today it was 15th of August and the National Mourning Day that was usually commemorated and observed to mark the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. That was cancelled by the interim government. So there was an expectation of a tension between the Awami League, which is Sheikh Hasina's party, and the opposition, the BNP Jamaat. But the BNP Jamaat leaders, they sort of, really took control of the streets. And I went to the Bangabandhu Memorial Museum where they were chanting slogans and access was blocked. So essentially, there was no sort of face-off as such.
You also had the opportunity of talking to some former protesters and some people from Dhaka in Bangladesh. So what were their views on everything that has transpired?
It depends on who you ask that question. And so obviously the people who are part of the establishment, that is the Awami League government, they are mostly in hiding. They are incommunicado. They are gone underground, as they say. And they have been scared because they fear retribution by the new regime. Some of these leaders have been arrested from the Awami League government. Some have been detained. And so there is a sort of fear of retribution. amongst the Awami League leaders and activists. The interim government is trying to take control. The BNP leaders are essentially right now coming out in the open. They are much more visible. They have emboldened by the fall of Hasina's government, and they feel that if elections were held in a few months from now, or say a year from now, they have a chance. So they're sensing an opportunity. And the student protesters have been emboldened. Two of them are part of the interim government. So they too see an opportunity to kind of bring around a new kind of politics. So there is an expectation that possibly these students may also join on the road to politics in the near future.
Right. And Shubhajit, we are hearing a lot about Hindus in Bangladesh being attacked. PM Modi, while congratulating Professor Muhammad Yunus on becoming the chief advisor for the interim government, also said that normalcy needs to be restored and the Hindu minority in the country needs to be safe. So what is the current situation of Hindus in Bangladesh?
It's complicated. So there is a sense of foreboding amongst the Hindu community minority leaders that I spoke to in the last few days. There were incidents, about 205 incidents is what they reported in the first 3-4 days, and about 4 to 5 deaths were reported. One has to remember that since there was no police at that point of time, there have been no police FIRs or complaints, there's been no case registered. So there has been that gap. But the community leaders say that, they've got calls from across the country from community leaders or their community members across districts. And they said that these 205 odd cases were across at least 52 out of 64 districts of Bangladesh. So that is something that has been worrying them. But the situation, they say, has been under control now. There have been cases of intimidation, harassment, and some vandalism also. There have been cases of robbery also. So the motives are also political. Some of them were aligned with the Awami League, party, so they were targeted because of that. There are a few also who have been targeted because of being Hindu, but that proportion is lower. But temples have been attacked, some temples, and there is a complexity there as well. So it's not just pure and simple targeted attacks on Hindus. It is much more complicated than that.
And what does Chief Advisor Muhammad Yunus has to say about the Hindu minority of the country?
Well, Professor Yunus, he went to the Dhakeshwari temple, which is like one of the most revered and holiest Hindu temples in Dhaka. He made this special gesture and then also met the Hindu community leaders and essentially assured them that, the government is working towards ensuring peace and normalcy and rights for all, and will act against and people who are trying to disrupt that. And he told them that, I want to bring justice to everyone. I don't want a situation where Hindu community has to fear for its safety and security. And there have been also cases where Muslim groups, they have also come out to protect some of the Hindu establishments, businesses, homes and temples. So these are also examples, because in the village there is a complex situation because there is a community level feeling at some places. So there is a social compact there. So essentially that is also a factor which needs to be kept in mind. So that's been the assurance. And in the last few days, we've seen that at least the community leaders have told me that, the number of incidents being reported are far less than the first 4-5 days when, there was no police presence across the country.
Right. And post former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation and flight from the country, videos started surfacing where protesters were seen entering the Prime Minister's residence and taking away certain items. And now we hear that they are trying to restore it all back?
Yeah, so as we saw visuals of people, vandalizing the Prime Minister's residence, which is called the Government Bhavan, it's in a very high security area. When there a couple of days ago, the students were still had control over that particular place, but they were trying to clean up, trying to restore the place, trying to recover the stolen and looted items. They had issued calls and appeals for people to come back and return. They have set up a collection counter. People were coming back, returning from the fridge or the sofa, chairs, iPhone, MacBook, laptop, iMacs, to even cash. One guy came back with 1 lakh Bangladeshi taka, which is about 72,000 Indian rupees. So 1 lakh rupee. And that guy was an auto rickshaw driver. One guy came back, said that, I'd taken away one of the ducks, but we have cooked it and eaten it, so I can offer money in lieu of that. So he gave money in lieu of that. There were people who came back with apparently jewelry, one diamond nose pin and a pendant, possibly belonging to the Hasina or her family members. In fact, they told me that even the boundary wall was damaged in more than 60 places. So they had helped the army to repair those. There were apparently glass shards all over the place. They had cleaned it up, all these young men and women, mostly students, also young professionals in their 20s, 30s. They were from government colleges, private colleges, young professionals, madrasa students, men, women, women who were like very modernly, progressively dressed, as well as people who were conservatively dressed. So you could see a rainbow society there, young people who were trying to put it back. So that was the kind of rebuilding or restoring and recovering of these items. That kind of an exercise was going on in the Government Bhavan, which is the Prime Minister's residence.
And former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has finally made her first statement post her resignation. So what did she say in that statement?
She basically issued an appeal to people saying that, she would want them to commemorate and observe August 15, which was seen as a call to sort of to her supporters, activists. But that did not happen. And as of evening, as of 8 o'clock local time in Bangladesh on August 15, that hasn't happened as yet.
And Shubhajit, what is the way forward from here? What kind of developments can we expect in the upcoming couple of weeks?
Well, in the upcoming weeks, I think we'll see more of this interim government trying to bring back normalcy, restart the transportation system, the metro system, the railway system, basically bring back life to normalcy. Also, schools, colleges, institutions are closed. They might be reopened. And we'll see how it plays out in the next few weeks, how they respond to the Indian government's position. India has been waiting and watching, and we'll have to see all of that in the next few days and few weeks.
And in the end, we talk about an allegation regarding corrupt practices. Yesterday, the High Court issued a notice to BJP MP Bansuri Swaraj in an election petition by Aadmi Party MLA Somnath Bharti, challenging her win in the Lok Sabha elections on the grounds of corrupt practices. Bharti, the Malvinagar MLA, had lost to Swaraj in the New Delhi Lok Sabha constituency. Justice Manmeet Preetam Singh Arora sought a response from Swaraj regarding the issues raised in the petition. Bharti claimed that the Bahujan Samaj Party candidate Rajkumar Anand, who was campaigning for the AAP until April 9 and then resigned from the party on April 10, was supported by Swaraj. The petition alleged that Anand was probed to help her win by cutting into the votes of the candidate of the India bloc. Bharti also submitted that on the counting day, one vote was found extra in the VVPAT compared to the counted EVM votes, and without adjudicating the mismatch, Swaraj was declared the winner. Swaraj polled 4.53 lakh votes, while Bharti polled around 3.74 lakh votes. The court also sought a response from the Election Commission of India. Bharti sought that the election to the New Delhi parliamentary constituency be declared void on the grounds that Swaraj committed corrupt practices and that she be disqualified from contesting any election for 6 years. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.